I'm right here. I just had to answer a door. I have received the budget overview slides in hard copy.
Terrific. That's great. So we have a motion and a second to nominate Sarah as the board chair. Is there any other nominees? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
That was an aye for you. Delayed aye, okay. So Sarah, take over.
All right, are we going to have maybe a presentation or an overview?
Yes.
First?
Yes, we are. And we have our finance manager, Jack Liang, here to make a presentation.
Good evening, everybody. My microphone, can everybody hear me okay? Oh, yeah. All right, so first of all, before we jump into the budget overview, I would like to have everyone review the budget hearing process and procedure, which is the second page right behind the agenda. So this is one that we will review and adopt for the budget hearing that's coming up on May 30th as a budget committee. So, Murali? Yes, your seat is right here. All right, so as you can see that part of the budget hearing procedure is it lays out all the members, including the board member, board of commissioners, as well as the lay member on the budget committee. And this is actually required by ORS. And as a budget committee, it's required by the ORS that for the budget committee to review the budget message and the proposed budget document, as well provide the public an opportunity to question and comment on the budget document at the meeting or a subsequent budget committee meeting or the budget hearing. It is Washington County's process to actually have the public comment period to be scheduled as a public hearing, which is for this year is scheduled on May 30th. So ORS 294.428 states that it's also the budget committee's role to approve the budget as submitted by the budget officer or as revised by the budget committee. And also the budget document as approved by the budget committee shall specify the ad valorem property tax amount or rate for all funds. So that's the role of the budget committee. And the process on the May 30th will go as the following. It will start with a staff presentation that provides of a budget overview. And then there will be, upon completion of the budget overview, the budget committee chair will first solicit budget committee and offer an opportunity for budget committee questions. And then upon completion of the budget committee questions, the budget committee chair will also ask the public testimony. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, except for representatives from regional and community-based organizations, where testimony is limited to 10 minutes per organization. Upon completion of the budget review process, a motion and a vote are required by the budget committee to approve the North Bethany County Service for Roads budget, including any changes by the budget committee and levy taxes. So this is the meat of the budget hearing process and procedure, and I would leave it for the committee to review that and possibly have a motion to adopt it.
I move for adoption. Just very parenthetically, just for everyone's benefit in the record, ORS is short for acronym for Oregon Revised Statutes.
Absolutely.
We tend to have to follow state law.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Proud burgers, but we do bow to state.
He said.
Did you second?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Seeing none, motion is passed.
Aye.
A little bit delay from Washington, D.C., but
It takes a little while to get back.
takes a couple seconds, yes. All right, and we'll move on to a quick presentation about the county budget in general. First of all, the county's budget is actually governed by a list of law and policies, and these are the lists that actually help the county in terms of deciding its priorities. Starting off, there's the Oregon budget law that the county has to abide by, and then also the county charter and code. Also, the county strategic plan also helps the county to prioritize our resources, including the North Bethany County Service for Road, which is part of the county's overall strategic plan. As well as the board priorities, transportation is definitely part of the board's priority this year, and it's North Bethany County Service for Road is also part of that priority. And also the budget policy, which is in more details that give guidance to the departments on how to develop the budget. And lastly, the budget committee and the public is definitely the driving force of how the budget is developed and where the priorities lays. And all of that is to serve the county's mission, and the county has one mission, and it states to provide excellent and cost-effective services that support healthy, peaceful, safe, and sustainable community, and encourage meaningful participation in community activities and county governance. So that's really what all we're doing in terms of the budget priority to serve the county's mission. And with that said, I will pass the mic to our folks, Steve and Sheila from LUT, to give us an overview of North Bethany County Service for Road budget for this year.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephen Roberts. I'm the Assistant Director of Land Use and Transportation. I'll walk through most of the presentation tonight. I have with me Sheila Giambroni. She's our department's Senior Administrative Services Manager, who actually puts the budget together, so she can answer any hard questions you have about that. And in the audience is also Andy Back, who's our Planning and Development Services Manager. So Andy is sort of our North Bethany historian, and of course his division oversees the actual planning and development activities, so he may be able to help address questions that you might have as well. So I think as we go, if you want to ask questions, I think that would be fine. And here we go. So to talk about the North Bethany County Service District, I think it's important to step back a little bit and talk about the larger North Bethany Transportation Funding Strategy. It was adopted by the board in 2011 in order to provide a strategy for how all of the necessary transportation infrastructure in the North Bethany Community Plan area would get built over time. It relies on multiple funding sources, the first being obviously the North Bethany County Service District for Roads. That's a taxing entity that you're responsible for approving the budget of. There's also a North Bethany System Development Charge, or SDC, that is specific to helping to fund transportation improvements in the North Bethany community. We also, development pays the TDT, the Transportation Development Tax. That's a countywide system development charge for transportation. The plan also relied on MSTIP, the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, and then what we call trust and agency funds. Those are funds paid by developers in lieu of being able to construct transportation improvements. So those monies are held by the county and then used at some point on the construction of an eligible improvement. There were 14 transportation projects in the funding strategy, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. 12 of those are eligible for public funding, meaning that the county can utilize the different revenue sources identified above in order to help construct those projects. At the time the planning was done, we assumed about a 20-year build-out for the community, and things have happened significantly faster than that. Those of you who live there know that. The revenues were intended to accrue over time. With the pace of development, it's sort of a good news, bad news. The good news is that the revenues are accruing pretty quickly and developers are constructing significant improvements in the area. The bad news is that we have some other projects that need to be built under traffic up there. So. This chart just gives you a quick overview, a visual overview of sort of the proportionate share of the different funds that are intended to help fund the transportation improvements. The total list of projects that was identified that were eligible for public funding is about $69 million, and that was in 2011 dollars. Of that, we anticipated about 2/3 of that amount would be generated by fees from development, so primarily the Transportation Development Tax and System Development Charge. About 15%, or $10 million, was committed from the MSTIP program, and that's countywide property taxes. And then about 20% of the total revenues anticipated were from the County Service District for Roads. And again, that's a property tax that's specific to this North Bethany community, and it's $1.25 per $1,000 of assessed valuation is the rate. Let's see, jump ahead. We're going to come back to that. This is the list of projects, and I know you probably can't read it. The next slide is a map, but this is the actual list that was adopted into the North Bethany Transportation Funding Strategy in 2011. So the map just gives a quick visual representation of those projects that were on the list. So the color-coded line segments here are just simply meant to indicate the various projects. So the little circles with numbers correlate with the projects on the list. The more important thing probably here is the red, if you can make them out, the red dashes on various of those road segments indicates that they're either completed or committed, that the funding has been committed. So you can see there's been a substantial amount of progress made on building out the plan, the roads that were identified in the strategy, and then the road segments that have the black dots on them are improvements that are anticipated to be completed with development, hopefully within the next, say, 18 to 24 months. Somewhat variable, but that's what we're anticipating. And I wanted to step back and just remind the committee the primary allocation of funding for the county service district in the current fiscal year, 18-19, was to fund the construction of what we're calling Springville Phase 3. That's improvement of Kaiser Road between, or rather Springville Road between Kaiser Road and Joss Avenue. It was identified as project number 4 in the original transportation funding strategy list. Of that $6.8 million, it's a variety of funding. About $820,000 is actually county service district tax revenues. About $3.7 million is from the North Bethany Transportation System Development Charge, and about $2.25 million is from the Transportation Development Tax. So as I mentioned earlier, development has been happening more rapidly than was assumed during the planning process. This map gives you an indication of developed properties, or so the blue parcels represent developments where building permits, or lots where building permits have been issued. So in many cases, these homes are complete. In some cases, the permits have been issued and the homes may be under construction at this point. We're anticipating a total of about 4,200 total residential units in the area. About half of those have already been permitted or completed, and about 90% of the land area and roughly 90% of the anticipated housing units have been through the land development entitlement process. So that's what needs to happen before you can actually obtain a building permit. It's interesting, in your budget summary, I believe it's page 310 or 311, you can see a chart that indicates the growth in both assessed valuation and the revenues from the county service district up here. The revenues have increased from, or the assessed valuation has increased from about $28 million in 2013-14 up to almost $500 million projected in the upcoming budget year, 19-20. And then revenues from the district have grown during that same time from about $37,000 to about $645,000. This is just a quick snapshot of what's happening in terms of road improvements up in the area as well. So on Springville Road, there's a multitude of things that are happening, and I'll go from left to right on the slide, or west to east. So we have what we're calling Springville Road Phase 2 is the first red circle on the left there. That we anticipate construction in 2019-20. That will widen that segment of Springville Lane to 5 lanes, realign the entrance to the PCC Rock Creek campus at 178th Avenue, and then a traffic signal will be installed at that intersection. Just to the east of that, we have a mid-block pedestrian crossing that we're planning to construct right around 173rd Avenue. That would provide a connection from the residential neighborhood on the south to the PCC and THPRD athletic facility on the north side. We also have the Urban Road Maintenance District, which we'll be hearing more about later tonight, is also funding a sidewalk infill project on the north side of Springville Road. That's the next circle to the east. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Springville project between Joss and Kaiser Road, which we also anticipate being constructed in the 2019-20 timeframe. Along Kaiser Road, a developer just recently completed the installation of left turn lanes and a traffic signal at the Springville-Kaiser intersection. And then we're also working currently with Polygon, who's one of the big home builders up there. They are anticipating constructing Kaiser Road improvements from Springville up essentially to the north end of the district or the county line in conjunction with some of their development projects. So we also anticipate that being constructed hopefully in 2019-20. So just for reference, the balloons on this slide, I should have said the green projects represent projects that are being funded and managed by the county. The two blue projects are developer projects. So looking ahead to the future, we've anticipated that there's a remaining section of Springville Road that needs to be completed between the PCC campus and Joss Avenue. So one of our recommendations from a subcommittee of this group that met back in November of 2018 was to go ahead and in this upcoming budget year, 1920, to spend about $900,000 to fund the design of this segment of future improvements. That would help us to refine a cost estimate, and then hopefully by the time that we've completed that design work, we have a more refined cost estimate, and then there may be some additional revenues available in the pot of funds that would actually be able to fund construction. At the current time, we don't have the construction funding available for that. I feel like there's a slide missing. Here we go. So briefly, I wanted to just touch on some recommendations that, again, the subcommittee of this group evaluated and recommended as we met back in November. And the folks in attendance at that meeting, we had at the time Chair Andy Dyke was there, Sarah Beachy, our committee chair was there, Dan Reed, and Tosin Abedin were there, and then Commissioner-elect Treese attended as well. So our recommendation really at this point was to sort of adopt a pay-as-you-go approach. At this time, our fund balances are a little bit limited, and really there's some uncertainty about what our revenues look like for the upcoming fiscal year. Maybe less so now, but at the time there was a sense that there could be a slowdown in the housing market. And then we also have some significant improvements that I mentioned along Kaiser Road coming online that will be eligible for credits from development. So we felt that it made sense to just sort of adopt a more cautious sort of pay-as-you-go approach, fund the design of the Springville segment that we just discussed, and then evaluate what our financial picture looks like later this year. And that would help to form then recommendations for the upcoming budget year of 2021. And now I turn to Sheila to talk about the numbers.
Okay, if you want to take a look at the far right column, that should match up with budget page 292 in your budget documents. Most of the expenditures to date have been, for the projects we've done so far, have come through the North Bethany SDC fund, which has allowed us to build up a little bit of a beginning fund balance. As you can see, that's a $1.1 million fund balance in the service district itself. And then referencing taxes for next year, the AB collection on 310 shows that a little bit higher, but we are taking a little more conservative approach, assuming that we don't typically get 100% collection. And so we're looking at $602,000 in taxes for the district. The miscellaneous revenues that you see there would be the interest on the fund balance and the monies in that fund. The operating transfers in. Now what we've done this year is we are transferring the money that we've collected that is available from the North Bethany SDC fund, as well as the money that's available from the TDT fund into the county service district. So that accounts for that $11 million. Approximately, for a breakdown, about it's $7.5 million transfer in from the SDC and $3.5 from the TDT funds. So if we look at the expenditures, you see a fairly large expenditures in your materials and supplies, and it's primarily in our professional services. So that would be paying for construction. As Stephen mentioned, we had the two projects, the $6.8 million for the Springville Road Kaiser to Josh, as well as the $900,000 for the Springville PCC to Joss design. Now, you know that doesn't add up to that 12 million, so we're estimating if numbers come in with the SDC and as well as the TDT, that we'd look at just about 4.9, maybe $5 million in unobligated reserve by June of 2020. Again, we're being relatively conservative. That is, like I said, it's quite a long ways away for us to do that estimate, but right now that's based on the actuals that are coming in and what we see. The additional money, interdepartmental charges, we have staff charges for projects. There's transfers to the road fund. As the office of the director, we do support this fund, so there's a little bit of money as we charge out our costs to all of our funds. And then there's a small capital outlay, and that's for right-of-way purchases. And that pretty well wraps up the budget for this next fiscal year. Like I said, the revenues are estimates at this time. We have no reason to believe that they won't come in, but again, they are just estimates. I would hope if we've met a couple times, and I think we're planning to meet again in the fall as we did last year. And by that time, we have another 5-6 months worth of revenues in. We should be at a better place to feel more comfortable about talking about another project. And I think that's all I have at this point.
Do we have any questions from the committee?
I just had a question about the segment 3 along Springville Road. I think last time we met, last fall, there was some discussion about looking at what our options might be to improve sight lines at the kink there. Is that what the URMD sidewalk infill is intended to address, or is that a separate issue?
Yeah, with the armed sidewalk project, that will help to pull back some of the vegetation, and there's a little bit of a grade there.
Right.
So those will be addressed as a part of the armed project. So I think it's gonna be very much more open. Sure. After that improvement's completed.
Okay. So would then that be a temporary improvement, or that would be sort of the, phase 1 of the later widening?
Yeah, that's really an interim improvement.
Okay.
And so we felt it was important. It was a big enough safety issue. We felt it was important to go ahead and move that along now. And given the uncertainty about the timing of a future more holistic improvement in that segment, we felt like it made sense to go ahead and do that now.
All right, thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you please address project number 9? It's the only project that was not programmed. I'm bringing it up because I think it's important to have a public discussion about it.
Okay. Yes, project number 9 is the infamous Shackelford Road Bridge. So, and let me back up to a map here so we can. There we go. I think I have a laser pointer. So project number 9 is up in the sort of upper left part of the slide. So the funding strategy did include about $7.5 million, and that was assumed to be about half the cost of a future bridge that would allow Shackelford Road to cross over Rock Creek in the future. So the expectation in the long term is that Shackelford Road will connect from North Bethany west and connect to 185th Avenue. So the only funding that was identified in the North Bethany funding strategy was essentially what was assumed as half the cost of a future bridge at Rock Creek. The expectation is that as the properties to the west that are not part of North Bethany, which are currently designated urban reserve, but are still technically rural, as the property comes into the urban growth boundary, development will occur, and the expectation is that the development will take responsibility for constructing a significant portion of Shackelford Road through that property.
So the 7.5 million is simply for the bridge over Rock Creek?
Correct.
Or half of it?
Assumed to be half the cost,
Yeah, okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah, and it's a pretty substantial bridge. It's, I want to say around 500 feet is kind of our estimate about how long the bridge would be. So it's a fairly substantial structure.
Thank you.
Also about Shackelford Road, since there is the expected connection, well, what's called Road A, but Shackelford to continue down and connect to Kaiser Road. I know that's been kind of going around and around with Polygon, what's the alignment going to be around the wetland? So can you give us kind of the latest status of that and what the timeline might look like?
Sure, so I think I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So I think you're talking about this segment east of Kaiser Road. Yep. So we did, well, I should say the Board of Commissioners did approve an ordinance last year that actually approved a minor realignment of a portion of Shackelford Road in that area. The portion of Shackelford Road east of Kaiser Road is not eligible for county funding at this point. It's one of those projects that's on the list but not eligible for public funding. It's on the list because that makes it eligible for credits, SDC credits, so a developer can offset their system development charge for the value of improvements that they construct. So that is something that we're also watching just to find out what may happen with that in the future. The timing of when that may be built is still quite uncertain at this point. So we're just sort of in a wait and see mode at this point.
So I thought I'd heard that Polygon had gone through the permitting process for an alignment at one side of the wetland or the other. I just don't know where it shook out. Is that not true, or is it not moving forward?
I'm going to look to Mr. Back. I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. You'll have to come.
They have preliminary approval. They're working with Division of State Lands on the final permitting. We go south of the wetland, south of where the line was on the map previously, but they're still working on their final permitting.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was clicking back. I thought we had a picture that showed the revised alignment, but I don't see it handy. Yes.
I have a couple of questions on our, the estimates are kind of a few years back now, as far as our estimates from the original North Bethany project list. I don't think the numbers have really been revised since I've been around here. And then again on, what our expected revenues, it says 2011 on those. And I just wondered if we could or should get some updated numbers on what those revenues look like.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the question. So I think what you're suggesting is maybe on the pie chart slide, sort of, I think this might be part of the question of just sort of tracking how the revenues have been coming in relative to this estimate.
Right, the expected revenue is listed estimates are from 2011. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we might have some more accurate numbers out there.
Yeah, we can get you that information.
And then even the costs on the projects for the project list could probably be updated.
Yeah, so that'll be a little bit of a challenge in that development has constructed a lot of the improvements that were on the list, so we may not have the actual numbers for those costs. What we could track is how much SDC credit we have issued for those improvements, but that's not exactly the same thing as the actual project cost. Some of the improvements are not eligible for reimbursement to the developer.
Right, I'm thinking of the future projects that we might, that we would be addressing.
Okay.
Any projects that haven't been done by the developers so far that we might be addressing in the future.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely get that for you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have a question on the project number 12. Under the potential future projects, it's regarding the Brugger Road, built to urban standard. Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean by urban standard? What else are you going to add there?
So project number 12 is Brugger Road.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the last remaining, and I'll try to use the pointer, one of the last unimproved segments is the south side of the street between 160th Avenue and about 163rd Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a project that we have been sort of waiting to see if this vacant parcel will develop, because the developer would have the obligation to improve the street along the frontage. We do anticipate a development application on this parcel may be coming sometime here this year. It hasn't been submitted at this point. So we're really just sort of in a wait and see mode about whether the developer will be able to go ahead and get in there and complete this improvement. If they don't, it could be eligible for public funding, and the county could manage that as a future project to finish that improvement.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
Seeing none, Madam Chair, since this is a fund of the county that, or a special district that simply receives revenues from a couple of sources, it's all contained in that district, I'd move for approval of the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It's going to be at the next meeting.
You don't want to do it now?
No.
All right.
So I was kind of looking at the agenda, I was like, is there a formal approval?
We have to have the public hearing and then approve
I
it.
knew that, but I thought we were
Right.
just moving
It's
it here to send it on. No, I know we had to formally adopt it at our meeting, but we're not approving it here? Not really, just.
No, this is just the orientation, first meeting, answer questions,
Much like the
get
county
ready
side.
for the public
Okay.
hearing.
All right.
Yeah, if you could explain the next steps then. What are our next steps, or how many more hearings we'll have?
Can you turn it back on? All right. So we'll talk a little bit about the next step as soon as we get to that slide. So essentially, we have one more meeting after this one. Oh, all right. We didn't include that slide. So essentially, we have one more meeting on May 30th, and that's one that includes actually the county's budget committee, the North Bethany County Service for Road Budget Committee, as well as the ESPD and URMD Budget Committee, and that's all scheduled on the same night. The North Bethany is scheduled at 5:30, and it's scheduled to last till 6:30. We'll actually have that 1 hour for the committee to come together and address any further questions from now till then, as well as offer the public an opportunity to bring up their testimonies, and that at that meeting, that's where the approval of the budget will happen. So that's and I will definitely be in communication before that with the reminders and also additional information for that meeting as well. In the meantime, between now till that meeting, if there is any additional questions that come to the budget committee, and we will actually be receiving that in the finance department, so feel free to email us or call us with any questions that you have between now till the first public hearing. So essentially, there's one more meeting before the adoption of the budget that's scheduled in June. So, any other questions about the next steps?
A little different process.
Yes, sir.
Are we, is the county board then going to see a third meeting? Or is it, the next meeting is going to be it?
So this part is let's consider this is the first meeting, which is the budget transmittal, where essentially the CEO and the finance team to transmit the budget, providing an overview of where the budget is. And then the second meeting is for the approval of the meeting that is of the budget, which is scheduled on May 30th. That's where the budget committee together approves the budget to proceed forward. And then the third meeting essentially is only for the board of commissioners which is currently tentatively scheduled for the June 18th board meeting. And that's where the board actually formally adopts the budget.
The board recommendation will come after the next meeting, won't come tonight.
Correct.
You're not anticipating any changes between now and the next meeting. I mean, you've got a two-step process where I thought we were simply going to adopt it and go all the way to June, but that's not the way it's working.
Right.
What's different this year is in the past, we've had one big meeting
Right.
where we had the county budget and all of the service districts together. And this year, we did a little bit differently where we had the county budget last week, and then we have the special districts budgets sequenced tonight to talk about individually. And then it goes to the public hearing to approve, and then to the board to adopt.
Yep.
Why not another meeting?
Hi.
I'm being silly.
Well, we're here to support the board's priorities, so. Any other questions? All right, well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank
to-
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you to the committee for doing that. Now, which one are we moving? maybe we can start a few minutes early. Our chair, Catherine Harrington, is on the East Coast in D.C. on county's behalf and listening in, so she's hearing what we're saying.
Good evening.
There she is. Yeah, good evening. We'll go ahead and start the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District introductions and budget process. We have to start out by electing a committee chair. Is there a nominee to do that?
I nominate Anthony Mill.
Well, should we do an intro first?
We will in a minute. Let's get chair. There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor of Anthony?
Aye.
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
take over and you can introduce or do whatever you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Why don't we start at my far right and just introduce ourselves so we all know who's here first, please.
The red button, yeah.
Karen Bolin, ESPD and Urban Renewal District Representative.
Dick Scout on the Washington County Board, representing the Aloha, Beaverton, and Cooper Mountain area.
Anthony Mills, ESPD ERMD Budget Committee.
Pam Trees, Washington County Commissioner, District 2.
Donna Tyner, ESPD URMD Budget Committee.
Roy Rogers, I represent District 3 on the board.
Leroy Bentley, I'm the Budget Committee member, and this says how long you've been on the Budget Committee, and I have no clue. I don't remember. It's been a while, 6 or 7 years, I guess.
Daniel Hauser, ESPD Budget Committee, and this is my first time.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine Harrington on the phone.
Oh, thank you. Jack, did you want to review the adoption of budget hearing procedures? Okay.
Do we want introductions from our gentlemen staff at the police sheriffs as well? Or?
Absolutely. Jack Leon, Washington County CFO.
Kirby Johnson, Deputy County Administrator.
Good afternoon, Pat Garrett, Washington County Sheriff.
And I'm Sean Fisher, the Undersheriff.
Thank you, Commissioner Scotton. So we will review the public hearing procedure, and this is actually going to be the procedure that we use at the May 30th meeting, where the public hearing will happen. So it is required by ORS, Oregon Revised Statute 294.426. At the Budget Committee meetings, it's the role of the Budget Committee to receive the budget message and propose budget document. Oh, by the way, this is the second page after the agenda page in the package that you just got. So to receive the budget message and propose budget document, as well as provide the public an opportunity to question and comment on the budget document at the meeting or a subsequent Budget Committee meeting or the budget hearing. So it is Washington County's process this year is to have the Budget Committee meetings here today to do the budget transmittal, and then we will have a separate public hearing that's scheduled on May 30th for the public testimony part. And to walk through it's also the Budget Committee's role to approve the budget as submitted by the budget officer or as revised by the Budget Committee. And the budget document as approved by the Budget Committee shall specify the ad valorem property tax amount or rate for all funds. The budget is available for review online, which you all have an opportunity to see it. We released that on April 30th. And then on the 30th, there's actually a couple different steps. If you look at the procedure, the ABCD part toward the bottom, it's actually going to start with a staff presentation and a budget overview. And upon the completion of the budget overview, the Budget Committee chair will actually ask for the questions that's on the Budget Committee and offer an opportunity for Budget Committee questions. Upon the completion of further Budget Committee questions, the Budget Committee chair will ask for public testimony, and public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and except for representatives from regional and community-based organizations where testimony is limited to 10 minutes per organization. So. And lastly, upon completion of the budget review process, a motion and a vote are required by Budget Committee to approve the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District's budget, including any changes by the Budget Committee and levy tax. A separate motion and a vote are required by the Budget Committee to approve the Urban Road Maintenance District's budget, and including any changes by the Budget Committee and levy taxes. So that's the full procedure of the May 30th meeting. So I will leave it for the Budget Committee to review this procedure and possibly make a motion to adopt it.
Do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded twice. Do we have any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition or abstentions? Okay.
All right, thank you. So tonight we have two presentations, obviously, regarding the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District. Before we get started with those specific presentations, there are certain laws and policies, guidance that guides the county's budget process. And starting with the Oregon Budget Law, the county charter and code, the county strategic plan, all of those are factors that the county factors in terms of prioritization and the budget development. The board's priorities, very important to the county's budget development priorities, as well as the budget policies as issued to the departments to follow. And last but definitely not least, is the budget committee and the public's opinion on the county's priorities. So all of those are driving factors to the county's budget prioritizations. And in addition to that, all of this work, the budget work, the prioritization work, goes into serving the county's core mission. And the county's mission is to provide excellent and cost-effective services that support healthy, peaceful, safe, and sustainable community, and encourage meaningful participation in community activities and county governance. So that's our goal. And with that said, I will pass the mic to the Sheriff Garrett to start the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District's budget overview. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Jack. Good evening, Budget Committee Chair Mills, committee members. I'm always grateful that there are people like you who clearly not only value community service, but find budget work exhilarating and uplifting. So thank you for being here and for your hard work. I'm joined tonight by Under Sheriff Sean Fisher. I will provide some general information about the district, its services, recent crime rates, and I'll also provide some budget detail about our requests that we're making this year. Under Sheriff Fisher will provide some vignettes that really talk to some of the work our staff does to put context to this budget. And for Chair Harrington, I'll try and kind of narrate what slide we're on. I'm moving on to number 2, the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. On advice from a Public Safety Advisory Committee in 1987, who studied safety in the urban unincorporated areas, commissioners established the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, and voters authorized its funding. Probably recall, before ESPD was established, staffing levels in the entire unincorporated area were about a half an officer, half a deputy per thousand, the rural staffing level that we see today in the rural part of the county, but insufficient for the urban unincorporated areas. The voters have supported increasing that staffing level to about 1 officer per thousand, which was determined back in 1987 to be the minimal acceptable urban staffing rate. And I think they got it about right. I think it's still effective today. In May of 2017, voters approved renewing the district with a 76% yes vote. The fiscal year, which convenes July 1st, will mark the start of year 2 of our current 5-year period. Onto the map of the county. Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. Apologize if this is a review, but we just want to provide a glance at the urban unincorporated areas. So that's blue and yellow in this map. The blue, of course, are our cities, labeled as you see them there, although the Portland label should be scooched over to the right just a bit. Yellow represents our district, which we're only too proud to serve, with residents numbering about 222,000. And then, of course, the communities served by the district are listed off to the right. To the next slide, titled ESPD. ESPD provides funds for services to include investigating major crimes, advanced training in crisis intervention and de-escalation strategies, continue an enhanced level or urban level of law enforcement services, taking into account population growth. And just a data point about calls and activities. In 2018, deputies engaged in
just over 68,000 incidents. Now, those are activities, police activities that get captured by our mobile display terminal or by dispatch. And about 2/3 of those activities are in response to public demands. The public makes a phone call to dispatch, we respond. And about 1/3 of those incidents are self-initiated. In 2018, we saw a 12% increase in public demand for calls. We think that's a combination of population growth and then just the changing needs in the district. And that corresponded also to a 24% decrease in self-initiated activity, which sounds like a lot. It's a lot. But we also know that on average, a public demand call takes longer than a self-initiated call. It's generally, you have to respond, meet someone's needs, it takes more than one deputy commonly. And that's just an interesting trend as far as the needs of district residents over time. Onto the slide titled, "The District is Safe." So I want to take a few minutes to discuss safety. This graph depicts the FBI Uniform Crime Report crime rate for violent crimes for the years at the bottom. The green line shows a violent crime rate for unincorporated Washington County. The red line for the state of Oregon, the blue line for our entire country. Two important points about the green line. Number one, it depicts violent crime for both the urban unincorporated area and the rural areas. We're not able to split out or just look at the urban unincorporated area or ESPD. We got to, the way those numbers are reported, it's just the unincorporated area for our entire county. However, the violent crime reports depicted by the green line, among them, 84% are reports that we know come from the district. We record where the calls come from in our records management system, making that a very strong indicator of the relative safety in the district. The vast, vast majority are coming from the district. Put another way, the probability an average ESPD resident will be a victim of a violent crime is significantly less, maybe about half as less as that of the average Oregonian, and by a greater degree than the average American. The same ratios apply when you look at property crimes, and this trend is supported by a couple of other metrics which are worth mentioning. The FBI Uniform Crime Report crime rate for the 5 most populous counties in the state, Washington County has the lowest crime rate. A colleague of mine who's the chief of a nearby city sent me a link to a home safety and security research firm called Safewise, who published their list of the 20 safest cities in Oregon in 2018, also based on the same FBI crime data. Of the 20 safest cities in the state, 6 of them are in Washington County. So we have great partners, great support for public safety, and a safe district as a result.
Could I stop you there? Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Absolutely.
So the unincorporated Washington County, I understand that you can't break it out between ESPD and the rural areas. And the sheriff's department typically goes to calls outside of the cities, except for Cornelius, is that right?
We provide services to Banks, Gaston, and
Okay,
Cornelius.
are those included in that number there?
No. That's unincorporated.
Okay. Why don't we have the total sheriff or total Washington County numbers? Are those, I understand that, we're ESPD,
Yeah.
but since we have the Fed and Oregon, those numbers that in the future.
Are you asking for to all have the numbers for all cities and the unincorporated area? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
the entire
or
county?
the county. I mean, you're not going to have a whole lot of crime out in the countryside just because 6% of the population. So to get a better idea of Washington County as a total crime levels in Washington County, that would be interesting to see in the future.
Great.
Since we have Oregon and
we can absolutely do that. Thank you.
So since we're talking about statistics, I would be also curious as to find out exactly what are the typical calls you happen to go out on and kind of have that reflected. Obviously, since we have a lower crime rate than all the other cities, there must be some sort of activity, or else you wouldn't have asked for additional personnel.
Yeah.
So I'd like
Yeah.
to know exactly what sort of calls the personnel will be addressing. And I'm
Absolutely.
assuming we respond to every property claim, because I know in Portland and some of the other cities, for example, they don't respond to all the break-ins, car break-ins, et cetera. So I'm assuming we do that more
Right.
than they do.
That is true. Thank you. Those are very good questions. We can absolutely provide the data that Chair Mills referenced, and the deputy adds we're requesting is simply a function of population growth to keep up with 1 officer per 1,000. I can tell you the top 2 charges that we have in jail. This doesn't directly answer your question, but it might be helpful. DUI, intoxicated driving, is still our #1 hot charge, followed by probation violations. But happy to provide a better answer to you after later into next week.
Okay, and so I guess also sort of related to that, I was going to ask this question later, but since Anthony started talking, I'm assuming about, mental health issues. Obviously, there are lots of homeless people and people with mental health problems running around, and there's halfway houses throughout the district and things of that nature. So I guess I just was kind of curious, maybe you're going to address this later, as to what sort of additional resources the Sheriff's Department is providing to address those needs.
Yep. Well, certainly de-escalation is a priority in the district. And our mental health response teams are running 7 days a week from about noon to 11 p.m. It's a really key part of the public safety local option levy. And just, organizational wide, we do focus a lot of training on de-escalation. And as we rotate staff through those mental health response teams, we share learning across the entire staff. Can you think of anything else, Sean, specifically that addresses? Right. Thank you.
Just a quick point of clarification on the colors. What appears to be gray on that particular board, that's the green line that you were referencing.
Oh yeah,
Sheriff
I see
Garrett?
that now. Yeah, right. This is an iteration. This is an iteration that is not the final iteration, though the graph is still accurate. In 2015, because of our changeover to the region, which was a 22 jurisdiction records management system, we and other area agencies didn't get the UCR data into the FBI that year. So that's the reason for the gap in the gray line that appears on the screen. But it is, you're right, the bottom line is unincorporated Washington County.
Right. I think maybe it's green in some charts or something. I think you referenced green, but green, gray, those are the broken lines at the bottom. That's the unincorporated area.
Right.
And in my recollection, the last time, I haven't looked for a while, but I mean, the number of people who live outside of the urban unincorporated metro area is a pretty modest number compared to the 610,000 people. It's
about 30,000.
Yes. Yep. So.
Yep. Pretty small.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving over to the slide titled Sheriff's Office Operations, there's a pie chart off to the left. With this graphic, we wanted to provide a sense of the ESPD budget as it relates to the overall Sheriff's Office budget and show how funding for fiscal year 1920 is distributed among the various functional areas, with District Patrol, that special fund, distinct and separate from countywide services. So the total fiscal year 1920 budget request for the Sheriff's Office is comprised of 8 funds. The 3 largest, General Fund, ESPD, Public Safety, LOL, and there are several smaller funds, contract services, court security, grants and donations, jail commissary, and forfeiture. All of these funds make up the total request of $123 million. This is an 8% increase across all funds from last year. And of all of our funds, about 42%, or $52 million, supports patrol operations, just patrol. On the slide, you can see the breakout between our 3 funds that supports patrol, off to the right. District Patrol is the largest portion of the patrol budget, and those services are restricted to the district. Next, I'll drill down into what makes up the District Patrol request for this next fiscal year. And this information can be found on page 99 of your budget summary. The ESPD budget request is $29.6 million. That's up 4% from this current fiscal year. The vast majority, as you can see on your slide, 72% of that budget covers personnel costs, 5% for materials and supplies, 23% titled Other includes our dispatch contract, capital requirements, and indirect costs. On the chart, we've highlighted some of the changes from the 18-19 request. And just to kind of cover those highlights, on the personnel services side, that budget, part of the budget request is up 8%. It's the main reason for the increased cost in the ESPD budget overall. And those costs are driven mostly by PERS and benefits as the largest drivers. We're requesting 3 additional full-time employees this year. One is a senior criminal record specialist. So for the past 10 years at least, our ESPD record staff that helps file reports, write some reports, assist deputies in the field, that's a straight line, there's been no ads. But our population has grown. ESPD deputies have been added, so we're catching up on the record side. And then we have 2 deputy ads, which is just a function of population growth to keep that ratio at 1 deputy per 1,000. On the materials and supplies part of the budget, that request is up 4%. One of the biggest parts of that increase is body armor. We just anticipate needing more vests, more protective vests this year than we did last year. We anticipate needing 44 sets to outfit 14 replacements that are scheduled. Their service life is just up. 24 recruit hires, the 2 new positions, and there's 2 vests for tactical team deputies. They're larger and significantly more expensive than the standard vests. Another materials and supplies portion, as you were, under the column Other, the section Other. That is not up a lot, but it is a significant, as you can see, 23% of our budget. So there's a few, I'd say, big ticket items. One is our dispatch contract. And while that's up only 0.4%, it represents a bill of $1.3 million. While our vehicle request is down almost half by about $384,000, that represents 2 new police interceptors, 1 new Tahoe. Police interceptor is your standard squad car, if you will. A Tahoe just affords canine handlers and supervisors to put more equipment, and in some cases a dog, in their vehicle. And then as far as capital outlay goes, that includes 3 radios for the new vehicles. Indirect costs is another big part of our other category, to the tune of $5.3 million, and that covers our support services like HR, county council, fleet, IT, things that we need to make staff go, basically. Stop before I move on. Yes.
I had a question, Sheriff.
Yes. Committee member Trees.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question about the 3 FTEs. Are those 3 FTEs included in the public safety and justice total of 33 FTEs as well? Yes. Okay, thank you.
On budget ads, is this somewhere in here, the body cameras included in that?
Not specifically, but we are drawing from all funds to pay for body camera technology and equipment. With grant money.
Grant money, okay. Thank you.
And just to elaborate just a tad there, committee member Bentley, we requested a video property evidence officer to support the back end needs of a larger body camera deployment, which we plan to do. We're taking it slow so we didn't get too far ahead of ourselves, because the discovery, redaction, public records, retention requirements are huge with that kind of video. Committee member Bolin.
So I read the budget, and on page 288 in the back, it has category miscellaneous, And last year you had 161,000, and this year you're asking for 398,000, which is a 146% increase. And I just wondered what goes under miscellaneous, because that seems like an open checkbook to me.
Right.
And then the second piece, so I'll just tell you this now so you can find it, is under contingency, which contingency to me is unforeseen or unknown things that need to be fitted in. And that had an increase of 33%. So are we planning to not know stuff? It seemed like a lot. I mean, I can see a 5, 10, 12% increase in contingency. 33% seemed a little big to me.
You're planning to not know a lot
stuff.
more in the future than they may not know now.
I don't know. That just seemed like a big jump to me. So those are my two questions.
Great.
We can get back to you on those, but that particular budget, on page 288, isn't one that's managed by the sheriff's office. That's kind of the parent fund where all the taxes go into.
Okay.
And the money is transferred out of that fund into Fund 182 that's on page.
So isn't part of it due to the PERS? I thought I was reading somewhere that part of the contingency was supposed to take care of the PERS in the future.
Not on this fund.
No.
Okay, different fund, okay.
If I may chime in, so for the miscellaneous part, it mostly consists of interest earnings that were actually earning on the fund balance. It's actually revenue instead of expenditures. So that 146% increase actually is represented by improvement in the interest rate market. Actually, we're getting better interest earnings on the fund's cash balance in a way. And the contingency really is the unallocated expenditure side, which is essentially also known as the ending fund balance. So it's the place where we have not made plans on. It's still retaining the fund to support the fund, but really it's just not planned on moving out to support the patrol yet. So it's just not part of the plan.
Thank you, Jack.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. No.
So I was noticing here on the jail healthcare that there's no change in funding, and so maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I was wondering, since it seems like there's a lot more mental health needs in jails and less, why is this fund flat?
We have negotiated amendments to the jail contract over the past 2 years and increased mental health counselors and other services to the jail. And so unless Don overrules me, I mean, I just think our anticipated costs, we don't anticipate additional increases into this next fiscal year. But we'll get Judy and Don to help us out here.
Well, they're confirming and walking up. Quick question, do jail personnel have body cameras?
They do not.
Okay.
However, let me just elaborate a tad. Yeah. When we do a jail extraction, or we have an event where we are going to anticipate using some kind of force, we video the heck out of that. We have security cameras all over.
Good evening. So part of what is showing in the jail healthcare budget here as a zero increase is because we actually are putting those expenditures in a new organization unit. So I think that the actual increase next year is between 4 and 5%. So that was budgeted in a different organization unit, and we put it here, so it looks like it's not growing because it only has 1 year of expenditures in it, but it's actually grown about 4 to 5%. And as the sheriff mentioned, we have been adjusting the staffing levels on a constant basis with the health provider and the sheriff's office staff input, and with health and human services, because providing good services in the jail for us is a moral responsibility. And so we take it as such. And so those have been adjusted. And I think the sheriff and I feel more comfortable now than we ever have that there is quality health care coming in the jail, and that we've worked hard to staff it appropriately given what the population needs are in the jail. So.
Okay, so I did notice that under I know this is not my purview, but the Housing, Health, and Human Resources bucket, they did get a substantial increase and also more personnel. So you're saying that that's where the services are coming from, and you're still going to be getting probably better services than they are now as a result, or not? Is it coming from some other bucket?
So that is a different
Bucket.
bucket and for different services. The jail healthcare is just in the sheriff's office, in the public safety and justice functional area. And it was in one organization unit. And because we moved contract administration to the sheriff's office, we just moved it into a new organization unit. So this $5.536 million, which is on page 90, is the jail healthcare budget. And that is for a contractor to provide services. And so that is the resources that they're providing, both physical, mental health, and other treatment in the jail.
Okay.
So
right.
So it's all right there.
Thank you.
You can see on page 96 is where the jail healthcare used to be, and then it was moved into the new organizational unit on page 90.
So it just zeroed out in one budget and got moved to another one. And we try to make things as confusing as we possibly can. Sorry about that. So.
And Don, the movement of that money was to manage the contract more effectively, correct?
Yes, so it was just a function of it becoming under the purview of the sheriff. And so we just moved it from one organization unit to another so that the sheriff could provide fiscal oversight of the contract.
And we have additional staff to ensure that we're managing it appropriately. And really, the contract manager we stole away from the state, who is a super intelligent person. Feel fortunate to have her. Love the questions. Keep them coming. Thank you.
Good evening. If you'll just indulge us for a few more minutes, we wanted to talk about, excuse me, some of our staff who work in the district and the value add contributions that they make in the urban areas of our county and ESPD. If you know our office, you know that DUII enforcement is important to us. It's one of our priorities. In 2018, we had 810 DUII arrests. And the gentleman you're looking at, James Abels, Deputy Abels, is responsible for 209 of those arrests. He came to our office in April of 2017 after about 5 years with the West Lynn Police Department. Prior to that, he worked in marketing, sales, and management roles with newspapers in Chicago, San Francisco, and Portland. In 1999, he launched his own software company and sold that in 2012 when he decided to make a switch into public service when he went to work in West Lynn. He came to our office because he knew about our commitment to DUII enforcement, and this was a passion for him. And he's currently assigned into our traffic safety unit doing DUII enforcement. In his 6 years doing this kind of work, he's made over 600 DUII arrests. He's twice been named Oregon's DUII Enforcement Officer of the Year. He's a certified drug recognition expert and a standardized field sobriety tests instructor. And I'd say Deputy Abels is a great example of what can happen when passion and the right job opportunities come together. For Deputy Abels, that passion is keeping our community members safe as they travel on our roads.
Do you happen to know what citation he has above his name tag? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think that's a distinguished service ribbon.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know.
It's a very impressive photo, too, I have to say.
The face of the man that's going to stop you. if you drink your
Yes,
coffee.
yeah, absolutely.
On your bike, right?
Well, yeah, you're not allowed to bike under the influence any more than you can in the car, yeah.
That is true. In this photo, this is Deputy Kelly Carney, and she's relatively new to our office as well. Started in October 2017. She graduated from the State Academy in 2018, having won the Victor G. Attia Award. If you know that, it's a very prestigious, it's sort of the main award that the state offers, sort of very prestigious award. The photo is of her at a community barbecue, standing with some children that are there, and that really represents what Deputy Carney is about. She reports that she really has wanted to be a deputy since her youth, since she was very young. She believes strongly in the power of connecting with community, and has seen firsthand how those positive connections really help build trust, which then turns the ability to create safer communities into a reality. Just to give you an idea of what those community connections look like in her life, recently she surprised a 97-year-old man with cupcakes on his birthday. Last fall, she heard about a family in Aloha who was struggling to make ends meet, realized they weren't going to have a very a good Thanksgiving, so she went out with her own money, bought them a Thanksgiving turkey. And then last Christmas Eve, with some of her fellow deputies, they put together the funds to collect some goodies, candy canes, and we're out cruising the streets finding kids to pass those out. So those just a quick few examples of the ways she's putting those community connections to work. Just a quote from her. She says, "Strong community relations is a big one for me. I bring a personal touch to law enforcement and sometimes find out more about where the unreported crimes may be occurring. It's a win-win." And I concur with that. This is Deputy Shannon Wild, and she too has felt the calling to serve her community since she was very young. She recently told us that she found a list of career ideas that she'd created in the 5th grade. Fortunately for us, cop was one of those, and it was kind of shoehorned right between astronaut and Irish dancer. No doubt she would have done exceptionally well in any of those, but we're glad she chose to come to work for us. Now, Deputy Wild is currently a member of our mental health response team that the sheriff mentioned earlier. And that, if you don't know about that program, it's pretty impressive program. It pairs deputies with master's level mental health clinicians in the car, where they can respond just immediately to crisis situations. And the work that they're doing right there on the street it really is value added for our community members. They're problem solving and keeping things from escalating. They're preventing the need to take people into custody, whether that's to go to the jail or to go to a hospital, and lowering the risk that we're involved in use of force incidents with people that are suffering from crisis situations. So really an impressive program that we're very happy with. In the picture, she's standing there with Sam, and Sam's personal pronouns are they and their. Sam shared they were struggling with bullying and other issues when talking with Deputy Wild. Deputy Wild shared her contact information with Sam, and Sam did reach out when they were struggling, and Deputy Wild was able to connect with Sam while on patrol with a clinician. And as a result, they were able to resolve the immediate issue, and Sam went on to graduate school and even invited Deputy Wild to their graduation. So that was pretty special. This is Deputy Pelletieri. He came to our office in September 2008, and he's been working in the ESPD ever since. He's had a number of assignments in our office, including his most recent, which you can see there. He was selected as a canine handler. And he's pictured there with our latest capital asset and his newest partner, that's Maze. Maze is a 26-month-old Dutch Shepherd named after the University of Michigan's colors, maize and blue. That brings our canine team up to 5 dogs total. We have 1 narcotics detection dog and 4 tracking dogs. Maze will be one of the tracking dogs. They get deployed fairly regularly throughout the county, and not just for our calls, but we make our dogs available to other agencies as well. They, in return, do the same for us. This is a collection of slides that really talk about, give you a snapshot of our community relationships, which are a priority for our office. Just starting at the upper left there, we'll just go around the horn clockwise and talk about what each of these are. Up in the upper left, Deputy Sergeant actually there with one of our community members at a Valentine's Day dance. We do that a couple times a year. It's actually a lot of fun. We have a couple of different senior centers that we go to on Valentine's Day or nearabouts and spend a couple hours with them. They really enjoy that. Next to that, we have Lieutenant Caprice Massey. She's there with a young gal that one of our Shop with a Cop events this past Christmas time. Again, that's a neat event where we get to hang out with a group of kids, typically from one of our schools, and help them shop for Christmas presents for their family with money that's been donated. Next to that, Deputy Strange is posing there with some dancers from the Calabarati School of Dance in Bethany. Next to that is Deputy Paracella. The gentleman he's with, he noticed as he was on his patrols, was out trying to mow his lawn and struggling to get it done, so Deputy Paracella gave him the hand he needed to get that done. Right below that, you see our posse out at one of the Bethany safety fairs. To the left of that, we have Deputy Mitchum, and I was at this event as well. These kids, every year, they look forward to one of our traffic motor officers coming and leading their bike parade. So that was at the conclusion of the parade where he was the leader, and a whole host of kids on their bikes and trikes and whatever they could find following along. Next to that, you see a picture of our Power Curve class. It's a class where we offer some basic self-defense training for community members, particularly women and young ladies. And then finally, you see Deputy Wood standing with a group of kids who graduated from one of our kids' safety academies. And we sure enjoy all of the many things that we do in the community with our community members. That's just a few of them. Wanted to give you an idea for how we're out and about. Last picture there, that's Deputy Natalie Huggins. She's sort of a unique story for our office, one of the few who started very young as an explorer with us. And she actually started getting paid by us in 2007 as a Marine aide working out at Hag Lake as an explorer. Very few people get to do that, and she was one of those. She moved on to administrative work, then she became a jail services technician, and now she's a patrol deputy working on the streets in our enhanced sheriff's patrol district. And with that, I'll turn it back to the sheriff.
Thank you, Sean. We'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have. Yes, ma'am.
What percentage of your officers are women and people of color?
We'll have to get back to you with specifics. I can tell you in the jail, it's about a little over a third female, 2/3 male. The ethnic demographics, I'll get back to you. On the enforcement side, it's much less female. It's about, I would say, 7 or 8% female on that. That's just a harder group to recruit from.
Enforcement side for people of color, because I know as you're probably hiring people, I'm hoping you will be briefing that up so I will see different types of people when I'm driving around?
Yeah, that's certainly our goal. We've had a couple of recruit classes lately where communities of color have been the majority in our recruit class. And that's not a result of anything that we're doing specifically to target, as it is, we believe, a changing community that's getting more diversity in the front door. And I can tell you also that there's a young men's group of high school and college Latinos called Mente. It's just one of the groups that we have been working with for years now, about 4 straight years. We've been part of their annual event, and we're building to build trust with that group. We have Latino males and females go and present and see that, if you can't, that saying, if you can't see it, you can't be it. That's the kind of investments we're making. That's just years in the making.
So I guess I wasn't clear. So is that sort of a focus now? Is that something that you're going to be looking towards to try to increase? Because you weren't kind of saying you were doing that, you just said it was kind of happenstance.
Yeah, I think it's happening more. This is our sense. We are getting more diversity in the front door as a normal course of just a changing community, but we are making investments that takes years long to build trust with communities of
So is
of
that
color.
translating in hiring, I guess, is my question.
It's too early to tell. It really
Okay,
is.
So probably no then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't say that it is.
It's not yet.
Yeah,
Not no, it's just not yet.
right. Thank you.
So I had a question. Last year, I think we talked a little bit about your new training center, and you didn't mention that, so I just wondered how that was going. Is that still coming along? Are we gonna, is it open and going?
Right, we're planning an open house in the next month. We did get commissioners through there on a tour about 2 weeks ago. It's scheduled to open in either late May or early June. In another budget, we have 4 training positions so that we can make it run like it needs to be run, not only to serve our staff, but police officers from every agency in this county. So it is absolutely
You'll be impressed.
sure to be.
So is it reflected in the new
Karen?
staffing, or where is it reflected in this? Where, because,
Our training staff that we have already, there's like 5 full-time trainers that we rotate through. They're deputies and a sergeant. They're going to be moving to the training center.
Oh,
right? 'Cause we're gonna
physically
do
moving.
all of our training there, almost all of it. And then we requested 4 additional trainers positions that we could rotate deputies through so that we could bolster the training capacity that we have to put not only our staff, but police officers from around the county through that training center. And then we're hoping for some sweat equity from our partner agencies to help us train. We'll have to get open house info out to you, though. I'll put that on I have some due outs to you, and that will be one of them.
well, I'm excited for what it's gonna do, but I just was curious where it,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you're going to be very impressed.
we'll see.
I think you will be. I'm that confident. I was. It really is. It's going to be an incredible facility.
I've asked people when I've been to recruiting events if they've ever thought about a career in law enforcement, and they look at me like I'm crazy. So you have a huge recruiting public relations issue, and I try to talk to people because my family is in law enforcement. It's a good career, right? But you have to be in the right organization. But the fact that people are scared to even consider it, I think that's a challenge.
Much more challenging. Much more challenging.
And that's
today.
all agencies. So I commend whoever your HR people are to try and deal with that. So
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Oh, go ahead, Chair Harrington, if you had something. Did you have something?
Sheriff Garrett, I know you and your whole department have made quite an investment in equity, inclusion, and diversity. I'm wondering if you could tell us real briefly about that and how all that work applies to the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Just this past year in 2018, we ran all 600 and plus staff through our diversity, equity, inclusion training that took about 18 months to create. We asked for volunteers, and we've got a very robust group of about a dozen staff members who almost all of them, represent a community of color. They have amazing family histories from Vanport to escaping Jim Crow era South, and we sent them to Seattle to get certified as trainers and 2 as trainers in the DEI curriculum. And they tell a combination of, provide that training intermixed with personal stories and facilitated discussions among staff in small groups about diversity, equity, inclusion, why that's important, why it makes us a stronger team to respect, honor, and support DEI. And so now we're working on phase 2. We don't know what phase 2 is going to be yet, but it's a part of our ongoing training curriculum. So thank you, Chair.
I had just a few quick comments and questions. One comment, and I'm not asking you for the information now, but especially in unincorporated Lowell where I live, there's Luke door facilities, group housing, halfway houses, and for the people that live in those communities, those are an area of concern. And I would just suggest that if you had statistics on hand so that when officers go to CPO meetings and people say, hey, I heard this is moving in, I'm concerned about, I'm assuming that there's not an increase in crime in those areas due to those facilities. I don't know, but that's my assumption. But a lot of the public thinks, oh, they're going to move in and start stealing my cans and stuff to pay for, whatever. So having that on hand for your officers that go to public meetings would be good.
Thank you.
Self-defense courses, the ones that you put on are mainly for women. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, the Power Curve program is primarily aimed at women.
Okay.
Yeah.
My comment about that is we have a lot more people IDing as neither male nor female, and there may be a segment of population that should be going through those, but if they don't identify as female, they might mentally think, so you might think about how can we have an opportunity for people like that to, because those are people that are often need it.
Sure.
Quite honestly. And to your point, I'm a member of the Civil Service Commission, and we meet quarterly, and the Sheriff's Department always comes. And I think the people that are interested in recruiting and those statistics, we spend a lot of time, and county staff deals with, it's very informative. So I encourage you to attend if you're interested in that. But the Sheriff's Department does seem to have difficulty recruiting anybody because you're in competition with other communities that might be able to provide better benefits and things like that. So I do know that they have some difficulty. Is there anyone else that has any questions or comments for the Sheriff's Department at this time?
Well, I'll make just one quick comment. We did talk a little bit today at our work session, I think, about benefits and so forth. And there will be some changes there, I think, to address. I'm anticipating to keep our operations and our law enforcement in particular competitive. But I have to think that training center is going to be a great recruiting tool as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, I had a question.
Yeah, please.
Are any of the ESPD, excuse me, are any of the ESPD resources used for the DEI training and the train the trainer type work?
I'm sure on the DEI side, yes. I'm sorry, train the trainer. You mean just in the training, on training staff?
Yeah, well,
yes.
On the 12 staff you mentioned going to the training.
Yes, and we can get you those numbers. I'm sure we do.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just answer an earlier question about the training staff. It's actually budgeted within the LOL Sheriff's administration budget, which is on page 118, if you're interested.
Chair Mills, I have a comment before we get out. I'd just like to say I lived in the Enhanced Patrol District since 1990, I guess. And I got to tell you, Sheriff, we're getting our money's worth, for the property taxes. Any of those levies that come up, it's going to be a slam dunk because your folks take good care of us.
Oh, thank you.
That's next year. I think that's what he said.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions or comments, we can end this segment of the presentation. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sheriff, Under Sheriff. We are actually scheduled to have an intermission at this moment before we start the URMD, and I would like to serve as the committee to see if we would like to have 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
Well, should we start at 7?
Here, 5, okay.
You know.
Yeah, well, so let's meet in the middle, like a 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's start at 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
And I see that we're scheduled until 9, so we'll have a couple hours of good discussion on it. A lot of members of the public here that probably want to discuss things
And I
too.
want to use every minute of it, Anthony.
But Chair, before we get
Sure,
started, may I announce that I'll give you a score update? That it's 40 Trailblazers, 46 Warriors with 2 minutes to go in the second. So they're holding their own. So, sorry.
Good news.
And Chair Harrington is still on the phone call.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we have Todd Watkins and Steve Frank, so take it away.
Great. Hey, thanks, Anthony. I appreciate your time tonight and all the committee members. My name is Todd Watkins, and I am the division manager for the Road Operations and Maintenance Division. And with me is Steve Franks. He's the Urban Services Coordinator for our division, and he manages the Urban Road Maintenance District program. So the Urban Road Maintenance District is a unique location within the county. It's served in the urban unincorporated area, and if it were a city, it would be the second largest city within the state, serving approximately 260,000 people. The slide here that we have just illustrates some of the facts about the district. Almost 24,000 acres, almost 68,000 tax lots, and that has a combined assessed value of almost $22 billion. With that, the Urban Road Maintenance District's revenue is based on a per 1,000 rate of about $250,000, and we bring in about $5 million per year. We're moving on to slide 47 now. And this is just an outline of the services that the district provides. Our primary purpose is road surface maintenance. We also provide requests for service when it comes to things like vegetation control and some other road-related issues, which we'll go over in more detail later. We also have a neighborhood streets program, and then more recently, we've added our pedestrian and bicycle improvement program. On to slide number 48, talking about road.
Can I just mention that what we have in here and what you have up there have different numbers, just for anybody that might. That says 49.
Oh, 40.
I know, but it's.
No problem.
So,
we'll stick with the numbers. Got it. We're there. So the pavement distress examples that we show here. First of all, I want to point out these are not urban road maintenance district roads. These are examples of distresses that we are preventing by maintaining the roads the way that we do. But these are typical types of distress that we see when we're maintaining our roads: alligatoring, cracking, rutting, raveling and delamination, utility cuts, which is actually one of our more prevalent distresses, and then weathering, which we have no control over and happens all the time. However, what we do is that we manage the road system actively. We don't just let it go by the wayside. And we do that two primary ways. One is we have a state-of-the-art computer software program called Street Saver, and it's the kind of the industry standard on the West Coast. And that models the failure rate and the deterioration of all of our assets. And so we can see what the predictive failure is going to be and the condition on our roads for planning purposes. To affirm that information, we actually contract out with the consultant a visual inspection of our roads to have them look at 25% of the roads every year. And we have that programmed, and we've been doing that for several years. And what that does then is it picks up places where either the computer model would not know of a particular distress that was occurring, or if something unique was happening. For instance, if we have a severe weather event, and we've seen this in the past where we'll have freeze-thaw and we'll have advanced deterioration, then those visual inspections will pick that up, and then we can tweak the computer model so that we continue to have good information. What we do through this is we use that tool for guidance, but then we use our inspection staff to actually do visual inspections before we select any type of road work. We don't just blindly follow the recommendations of the software. Speaking of road maintenance techniques and what we do when we're selecting our treatment types, we have two primary treatment types that we use. We have what are called overlays, and we have slurry seals. We're now on slide number, is that 51, which is the maintenance techniques for Chair Harrington. What we do is we alternate this technique every other year, and that's really for the sake of contract efficiency and economies of scale. An overlay is basically when we have a asphaltic concrete, the black asphalt that comes from the plant, hauled to the job site by truck, special machine, which is a paver, lays it down, and you get a brand new surface. A slurry seal is a mobile operation that puts basically a sandy type of a mix with liquid asphalt, and it's a thin layer of emulsion that goes down that basically seals the cracks and provides a new wearing surface. The overlays, which are the red lines up there, which shows the amount of miles we do in a typical year, provides actual structural strength to the road, whereas the slurry seal doesn't add any structure. Here's an example of what an overlay looks like. So you have dump trucks that back into a paving machine. They lift their trucks, and then they dump the asphalt into what's called an auger or a hopper, and it lays out a nice smooth surface, and then rollers come in behind. When this occurs, the pavement condition index gets reset to 100, which is a brand new road. We lose a couple of points per year just from the weathering effects, and then you add traffic and other factors, and it goes down after that. When we do a slurry seal, again, mobile operation, self-contained, this adds about 6 to 12 points to whatever that PCI was that starts with, and this happens about every 7 to 10 years, and after we do 2 of these treatments, we'll then come in and do an overlay. So oftentimes people will say, well, you were just in my road last year. Well, we don't come back to a road really any more than 7 to 10 years at the earliest. So with the amount of roads that we have in ERM, we are looking at a pavement condition index for all the roads to meet certain targets. And the Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee a few years ago actually helped us establish a target of 75 for the road condition within the district. As you can see, the non-ERM roads and the rural locals would be the comparable one, have a target PCI of 65. The great news is that the current PCI average network-wide is 83 for the urban locals and 81 for the neighborhood routes, which is well above the target. And we're really proud of that because the urban road maintenance districts have some of the best roads, not only within the region, but within the state. And it's really because of this dedicated funding that we're able to do what we can to maintain these local roads. Oftentimes, the local roads within other cities and other jurisdictions are the last to receive treatments. In this case, ERM gets the premier service year after year after year. And that's because of the dedicated funding that we have. So this is an illustration on slide number 57, pavement condition index. What we have here is a trend line that illustrates the average PCI across the district. Now, although the average PCI that you can see is somewhat steady, you know, we have 82.4, 82.5, 81.7, and so on. What you will notice is that the blue section, which is the very good pavement condition with a range of 85 to 100, is getting smaller in years 2014, 15, and 16. And then it gets bigger again. You think, oh, gee, what happened there? Well, what happened was in 2017, there was a change in the way that the condition was evaluated. And so they, the way that happened was as two of the items were broken out, the pavement delamination and the raveling. And so the scores got somewhat adjusted for that. However, as you'll see here, the trend is still going in the right direction to where we're reducing the number of very good roads and we're increasing the number of good roads. And with that, let's see here, do I know where the, with that, right here is that 75 PCI in this good range. So we want these, oops, sorry about that. Got ahead of myself there. There we go. So what we have here is we've got this green area right here is getting larger to correspond to the PCI of 75 in the good area. So the PCI is going in the right direction that we want it to. Any questions on pavement condition? Donna.
This is a self-serving question, only because they're doing work in my neighborhood. Because we're putting that new water tower up, by the Jenkins estate. Anywho, you mentioned something about the utility cuts. So I guess my question is, what responsibility is them to put the road back the way it was after they do those wonderful utility cuts?
Sure. So the utilities are responsible for repairing the road. And what we do is that we issue them permits and we assess whether or not the condition requires them to do just a trench patch or an actual, what we called an inlay, which is they remove the entire road surface and put back a new surface where the trench was. It's all dependent on what the existing condition is, because it's not fair to the utility to have them go in and do a full width repair on a road that's maybe 10 or 12 or 15 years into its life. But at the same time, it's not fair for us to have a trench patch on a brand new road. So we look at them case by case, and we do issue permits and we do inspect them.
Okay, so patches are okay then, if they do a trench. I'm just kind of wondering, it's all these patches in my neighborhood now that didn't exist.
Yes, they are okay, but they do reduce the PCI, and so they will affect those numbers.
All right, so then maybe we'll have work done at some point.
Correct. And if a trench fails, we do actually hold the utilities accountable for the life of the trench. So if we know that it's a water line or a gas line or a telecom line, we will figure out who that is, and then we'll have them fix those trenches. Sure. Yes. Indefinitely. Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yes. We don't have a moratorium on paving. However, we do hold them responsible for the life of the utility that's there. We're now on to, is that number 58? I'm sorry, I can't see the small number there. It's service request pie chart, and this is an illustration of the other work that we do that's road related, having to do with road maintenance. Vegetation requests are our most predominant service requests, and that can be site distance or vegetation growing, encroaching into the right-of-way. We also do get an occasional pothole or rough road requests, and we will go take care of those. And then, as you can see, there's just the remaining requests that round that out. Another program that was added to the Urban Road Maintenance District was the Neighborhood Streets Program. And this is a program that's actually managed through our traffic engineering group. And the goal of this is to discourage undesirable driving, improve safety for multimodal, and then it also is an interactive process with the local neighborhood. What happens is if there's a neighborhood that's interested in traffic calming, they'll reach out to us, and then we will work with them on education and enforcement, and then depending on how that goes, we can actually move on to the installation of physical devices. Yard signs, as you see there with the 25-mile-per-hour signs, are common, and then also the speed feedback trailer, the radar trailer is a common use, and we have that going almost nonstop. We have that mobile, and we can move around, and it's always in use. Those are not photo radar, those are just speed feedback signs. The other program that we want to talk about tonight, which is kind of the most prevalent element of the urban road maintenance district right now, is our pedestrian and biking improvement program. This is actually a program that started several years ago, and the goal of it is to work through neighborhoods that have things such as sidewalk infill needs, or shoulders that could be widened, or any number of things of that nature. We really do want to focus on those areas where there may not be a capital project coming through, or there's just a specific need that we can really help with. We've done a lot of good with this. It started back in 2011 with the project selection. We've got the process is now a 2-year biennial selection process, which has really helped us out because previously, trying to do this on an annual basis, we had challenges with trying to get the selection, the design, and the construction because we were basically on top of each other year after year. So now what we do is, by doing a biennial selection process, it gives our project management team and our designers a really good group of projects to focus their work on, and then they can get that work done before we're vacuuming them more. So it really helps with the planning and the design and the construction scheduling. Since 2011, when this was started, we've funded 49 projects with $22 million worth of earned monies. We've already completed 33, 11 are currently designed, 3 are under construction, and 2 actually had to be canceled. The reason why they were canceled was because during the initial scoping, we didn't realize there were some challenges that were above and beyond the program, so the best decision was to postpone them and cancel them and really wait for a capital project to come through. In the first 5 years of the program, we had a very efficient program. At 94% of the budget was being expended, and that was really kudos to our project management team, which is in our capital project service group, and they've just done a phenomenal job of taking the concept and the resources and maximizing them as best they could, and they've done a great job, and I can't say enough about them. So moving on to the selection process, which is slide number 63. This is a very involved process. We take submittals from the public as well as staff. We have a review process that involves the committee. We have criteria that they establish, which is safety and connectivity and all sorts of different elements that they provide weighted values to. We go through that selection process, and then ultimately they recommend projects. And once those projects are recommended, it goes to the Board of Commissioners for final selection. We have maps and what we call online open houses. We send out flyers to neighborhoods. So we really have a very involved and methodical process to the selection effort to make sure that we're really getting the best projects selected. In fact, there have been times where we've had people come in and say, you know what, this isn't a good project, and you probably would be better spent doing something else. And we've taken those words of advice and heeded them and postponed projects just for that very reason, because neighborhoods will come in and they know better about a particular situation, and it's been a really good partnership. So here's a summary of the selection process that we're currently in. We've got 8 sidewalk projects that were selected in 2017, and of that, we had a almost $7.4 million budget to work with. 6.6 of that was earned, and then we had some gain share money that we leveraged. In 2019, we're looking at an $11.4 million program amount with $7 million from earned and $4.4 million from House Bill 2017. Now, $7 million is spread over 2 years, so it'll be a $3.5 million budget request in 1920 and then 2021.
Could you tell us what House Bill 2017 means and why we get money for it?
So House Bill 2017 is the recent transportation package that was passed by the legislature, and so a portion of that money is going towards bike and pedestrian improvements. To round out our presentation, I just want to show the examples of some of our projects. We've got, this is Beef Bend Road, and the pictures speak for themselves. The value that these bring to the community are really immeasurable. This is a great example on Riggett Road down in the Cooper Mountain area. And then, this is actually on 214th Avenue. And what I want to point out about this series of pictures here is that oftentimes people will think about a sidewalk as just being a simple 5-foot swath of concrete that you can just lay in anywhere. And what this illustrates is that even a simple sidewalk project involves quite a bit of earthwork, excavation, and staging to where it's not just 5 feet of concrete. There's a lot of work that goes into it, grade preparation and staging, like I mentioned. So that's what this illustrates here. Another great connection in Aloha. And then finally, what I want to do is recognize the advisory committee. We've got Daniel Hauser here, who's our chair, Ray Eck, Tim Conley, Blake Dye, Michelle Lemus, Mary Manso, Marty Moyer, Kimberly Goddard-Koff, and then we do have 2 vacant positions. So if anyone's interested in joining ERMD, we're always looking for a good hand.
And they have great snacks too.
And we do have great snacks.
Better than most.
We do have great snacks, and we take requests monthly. But we could at the request. That's right. So let's get to the bulk of discussion. So we're on slide 70, Chair Harrington. This is the requested budget. So we are showing a $7 million request. Our revenues are at 5.2, as I mentioned. We do have a fund balance that we're working with, which is what the delta is being drawn from there. That $2 million additional that you're seeing there is going to be going towards our ADA improvements. The Americans with Disability Act requires that we construct accessible routes when we're doing certain work. And so we are in the process now of tackling curb ramps throughout not only the urban road maintenance district, but countywide on our roadways. And that's where that $2 million is going towards. A summary of where that $7.3 million would go. Service requests, ADA and other activities would be 38%. Surface treatments, 15%. We're still going to be paving and soil sealing roads. And then our bike and pedestrian improvements will take up the bulk of that request. On to budget summary, slide 72, Chair Harrington. This just shows the expenditures and broken down in tabular form. We have a current fund balance of a little over 11 million. Our revenues at 5.2. And then with the $7.3 million expenditure, it would still leave us with a fund balance of $9 million. So even though we do have a little bit more expenditure this year, we still have a healthy fund balance. It is important that we do maintain a fund balance, by the way. I know that there have been questions in the past about drawing things down, but we do need to have that money for cash flow, especially when we have these safety improvement projects and the contracted surface maintenance contracts. We need that for cash flow because the bulk of the work happens in the summer and the revenues don't come in until the fall with property taxes. And so we need to maintain that for that purpose. And the last slide, slide 73, are projections. What this shows is 3 bits of information. The black line is our projected fund balance. The blue line is the surface treatments, and the red line is the bike and pedestrian improvement annual expenditure. And what we are seeing that we are going to have in the future now is that our roads, although we were keeping a relatively low amount for our surface treatments at about $750,000 a year, we are going to have to start ramping those up as our pavement conditions do start to deteriorate. And with doing that, we are going to be seeing a decrease in the safety improvement projects. But we still maintain a healthy fund balance, and that's important to us. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you have. And we have an hour and a half.
Well, I don't really have any question, just a statement. I just wish we could give you more money, because I think this is really important. I know that the county is hiring lots of employees, so I was hoping that you'd get a little bit more money, but that probably means less employees are hiring.
Thank you, Donna.
Well, but this is just for earned and not, so so there may be things that also help out earned within the department.
Right, and ERM doesn't have any employees. ERM is a special district, and so there are no employees. We have 0 personnel costs for ERM.
Can I have you go back to the previous slide?
So we're on slide 73, Chair Harrington.
I'm just looking at the projected fund balance so far out into the future. It's interesting how they get that. Do they foresee an uptick in subsequent years? There is a slight uptick in between 26, 27 and 27, 28.
Yeah, so when we do our forecasting and our modeling, especially with our pavement condition, and this is really the driver of this is our pavement condition, because that is the core function of why we're here, right, is to take care of the roads. We're confident at 5 years with our pavement conditions, and 10 years is kind of the outside window of where we're at with that. So, so I would say we're reasonable here, but beyond that, we would need to be cautious as far as what the data says with the modeling.
So the fund balance in part is modeled upon property tax revenues that you get, the
Correct.
25 cent, which would normally grow 3% in a growing economy that grows at least 3%, which we could have a downturn which might limit growth in property tax revenue, which might further depress that. Is that right?
Correct. And that's why, although we are doing a 2-year biennial selection process for the bike and pedestrian improvements, we're looking at this every year, and we're managing the payments every year. So it's not like something is going to come at us out of left field as a surprise, where we're going to put it on the shelf, and then all of a sudden something happens. A couple years ago, when we had a really big weather event that just decimated the regional road systems, we went out there and we actually reassessed every road across the entire network, urban road maintenance district and road fund roads, the county roads outside the district. And we did that on purpose because we knew that the model wasn't going to be representative of the actual conditions, just based on our experience. So we have people that are assigned to do this day in and day out. We have an asset management team, and so I don't foresee this being an issue. I think as the fund balance gets closer to this, to these lower values, working with our finance team, working with our payment manager, with our consultants, I think we'll be fine.
Consultants come up with this information, or was it in-house?
No, we do this ourselves, right? The consultants merely do the inspections, but they do that throughout the region, and so we're confident with their data.
Yeah, and within ERMD, are there any major facilities that could be impacted, other than an earthquake, from flooding? Because I know that ERMD is, not the whole county, but just within ERMD, are there potential, not ticking time bombs, but a time bomb if there was another weather event?
So we certainly have areas within the urban area that are susceptible to flooding. There's areas in the Aloha area that are lowlands. Butternut Creek is a great example. And with those, though, we would just manage those as they come, and we have the resource to do it. Because we can also, again, we've got the safety improvement projects, the bike and ped projects. Those can go on the back burner if we need to use those resources for the road-related efforts.
Chair, I had a couple questions. Thank you. Todd, Steve, thank you very much for coming in. I'm glad that you had a slide disclosing that I was chair, so I don't have to file any conflicts of interest. I do have a question for you, though. The spend down of the fund balance, you noted that a lot of that in the coming year was because of ADA improvements. Is that going to be driving some of the continued spend down of the fund balance, or are other factors driving that more?
I think we'll see that in the near future. I do see that as something that we will be continuing to do, yes.
Just one other question. Can you, either of you, speak a little bit about the project selection process this time around for the pedestrian and biking improvements, and perhaps any changes to have greater emphasis on serving communities that maybe historically have been underserved?
Sure. And I'm going to turn that over to Steve, because Steve does handle the day-to-day operation of that program, and he manages the selection process. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve Franks.
Sure. Thank you. Actually, the public comment period for it starts in June, so this is very timely. June 1st to June 30th is a public comment period. There are over 130 candidates identified. ERMDAC has narrowed that down to 25 top candidates. And at their meeting tomorrow, they will confirm those. I'll be ready to roll out those for public comment. And essentially, for ERMDAC to narrow down that list, there was a sorting process we used to try to avoid the word scoring, because with 130 candidates, they're not scientifically scored, but they're sorted in a broad way, looking at safety and connectivity as the top criteria, as well as some others, including areas where there's commercial activity or nodes of activity. That's among the other criteria. So essentially, ERMDAC used those to narrow down the 130 candidates to 25. We'll confirm those tomorrow. We'll roll them out. We're going to be mailing over 30,000 postcards to residents within a quarter mile of those candidates, notifying property owners, press releases, social media.
Thanks. And one other thing I wanted to add to that, that I was fishing for, is that this time around there was an increased emphasis placed in the sorting process to look at what Metro, I believe, defined as areas with higher concentrations of communities of color and other underserved populations. And that was something that we emphasized this time around that I thought would be helpful to share with the group.
And frankly, I was stumbling at how to phrase that, so I was aware of it, but that's right. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for your time tonight. We appreciate it, and we'll be available if you have any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next topic is next steps and questions.
All right, so as far as the next step goes, we have one more budget committee meeting, which is a public hearing that's actually scheduled for May 30th. And that is actually all of the counties, the three counties budget committee are all scheduled on the same day. North Bethany at 5:30, Urban Road Maintenance District and Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District at 6:30, and then the county's main budget committee at 7:30. That's where the public will actually have the public comment time included in those scheduled times. And the location will be here, the Public Service Auditorium, and that's where actually the budget committee will move to approve the budget onto the board to adopt the budget on June 18th. So, any questions about that time and location. So between now until the end of until May 30th, if you still have any questions or any questions come up regarding the special district's budget, feel free to contact finance, and then we'll be happy to answer any additional questions regarding this year's budget. So, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say, as we were wrapping up, I was on ERMDAC for a number of years until I joined the Planning Commission, which meets about the same time. And I noticed that there were a couple vacancies. If anybody knows people, that are interested in that, it's incredibly interesting committee to be on. You really do have an impact because you're helping to decide where those are. So whenever the county has the next opening for those, I would encourage people.
So how often do they meet? When do they meet?
We've been meeting, because we switched to a biennial project selection process. In the years where projects are being selected, we meet more frequently. And in years where we don't, we meet less frequently. So it's a minimum of roughly quarterly, but we've been meeting closer to, sometimes it's every month, sometimes it's every other month. So it's somewhat infrequent, but maybe 3/4 of the month during a project selection year.
Is it daytime or night?
It's at 4 o'clock on the third Wednesday, I believe.
I'd just like to take a moment and thank this budget committee as a new commissioner and as somebody who hasn't worked within the government process and within the budgeting process. I can't tell you how valuable it is to me to have your questions asked and your perspective brought forward. So I just want to say thank you very much for all of your input tonight.
All right. Any comments from Chair Harrington on the phone?
Thank you very much for accommodating me this evening. I could participate remotely. Good work, team.
All right.
Thank you
Chair
for
Harrington.
staying up so late, Chair Harrington.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. I'll hand it back to the Chair of the Budget
Well,
Committee
I think
to
that we
close
can
the meeting.
adjourn then.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, Leroy? Correct. The approval will happen at the, I'm sorry. Right. This is for the May 30th process. Yeah.
Sorry about that, jumped the gun.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Yes, Anthony.